Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Able Voices podcast. I'm Dr. Rhoda Bernard, founding managing director of the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education, and I am proud to present this podcast featuring disabled artists and arts educators. We are inviting artists with disabilities to be guest hosts for the Able Voices podcast. Today's guest host is Case Valentine. Case Valentine is an influential voice in the world of alternative music, fashion, and autism advocacy. Their powerful music and bold comedic TikTok reel style have earned them a devoted following of fans who love their unique perspective and inspiring message. As an autistic person themselves, Case is passionate about promoting autism awareness and acceptance. Case uses their platform on Instagram and TikTok to share their own experiences and educate others about the challenges and opportunities of living with autism. Their content covers a wide range of topics, from alternative fashion and music to autism advocacy and comedy, all with a focus on empowering their followers and creating a more inclusive world. As a performer, Case has an electric energy that captivates audiences and leaves them wanting more. Their live shows are a mix of ethereal vocals, whimsical guitar, and raw emotion, creating a truly unique sound. Whether you're a fan of their music, content, or advocacy work, Case Valentine is a force to be reckoned with. Through their creativity and passion, they're helping to create a world where everyone can feel accepted, celebrated, and empowered.
Hi, my name is Case Valentine, and I'm currently guest hosting the Able Voices podcast. I am a gospel musician and content creator on Instagram and TikTok, and I have a passion for alternative music, fashion, and disability advocacy. I'd like to start off by introducing our guest today, Jess from the band Mallavora. Hi, Jess. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Case. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yes, I'm so excited as well. I'd like to start off by asking you to tell us a story about you as an artist. How did you start off as an artist, and how did you get to where you are today?
I've been involved with music for as long as I can remember, really. I've come from quite a musical family on my dad's side. And then as a child, I was involved in school musicals from a young age. I learned piano and I was always very musical, and then was a member of various bands and musical groups growing up. And then I met the boys in Mallavora when I was at university in Birmingham, which is in the middle of England. And after a little while, they asked me to jump on a performance with them at a festival they were playing. And that went really well. And so they asked me to be the vocalist. And that was in 2019. So I've been with the band ever since.
Great. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome that you got to meet your band in uni. I've definitely had similar experiences with the groups I've been a part of. Like, being in university is just really good for networking, kind of like getting to know other musicians and like-minded individuals. And it's just great for that. Next, I'd like you to tell us about your experience as a person with a disability and as an artist with a disability.
I identify as a disabled person. I've not really identified as disabled for that long. It's only been a few years, but I have lived with the conditions that I've had for as long as I can remember. But I was dealing with a lot of internalized ableism. I think I was very much in denial about my situation and how much my conditions were affecting me. And it sort of all came to a head in 2021. So really recently, only a couple of years ago, when it sort of all came crashing down. My symptoms just went to a sort of record high. I was signed off sick from work, and I sort of found myself unable to do anything much. And then I think I kind of realized from that point, with a lot of therapy, that I'd been a little bit in denial about the fact that I was disabled and that I wasn't able to just push through and try and be like everyone else, because I was dealing with things that most people don't deal with. And it was kind of a long process of adjusting and still adjusting. You know, I'm not there yet for sure, but having to make some significant lifestyle changes and also mindset changes, a lot of work on acceptance and grieving what I'm not able to do and things like that. But I'm in quite a good place with it now, where I feel proud to be disabled. I feel able to say, you know, I'm disabled, and I don't shy away from that anymore. But my disabled experience is quite a complex one, because as I'm chronically ill, my experience is often not a fun one in the sense that chronic illnesses can be really hard to live with, just by the nature of the symptoms that you experience. So I'm sort of simultaneously, I feel proud to be disabled and proud to do what I'm doing with the conditions I have, but also there's a lot of complex feelings you have towards your disabled body when you're chronically ill, and not just when you're chronically ill, but particularly for me, I've found my relationship with my body and my disability to be quite mixed and complex. And then as an artist, again, obviously, as I said, I've been with Mallavora since 2019, but 2021 was where I sort of had that big shift in how I felt and how I identified and how I was sort of coming to terms with my disability. And shortly after that point, I started using mobility aids. So I started using walking sticks out and about a lot, and occasionally a wheelchair as well, which I got later on. And so my relationship with being disabled as an artist is sort of a thing unto itself, really, in the sense that previously I felt that my disability was a major barrier to me being able to be an artist, to me being able to be on stage. And I still think that to some extent, but I think what I'm starting to manage to achieve as a disabled artist gives me quite a big sense of pride as well. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, I definitely see how that can be a pretty complex experience. Could you maybe elaborate on how you felt and how it was for you to be in the position of realizing that, oh, this whole time, all these things I've spent my whole life experiencing and kind of like dealing with are actually a disability and I am a disabled person? How was that period of kind of like realizing that that was a case, or did you know that prior and just didn't have a diagnosis, or how was that for you?
Yeah, no, it's the former. So yeah, it was that a sort of realization of like, oh, this is disability. This isn't normal aches and pains. Even though I had diagnoses by that point, I think it was, again, that I was still in that sense of denial about how much it was really going to affect my ability to do what most people can do in their life. So I was still trying to do like a 40-hour working week in quite an intense office job. I was on my feet a lot. I was trying to, I was really into sports. I was, regularly using public transport. I was out and about, particularly as a student. I was, trying to go clubbing and do all of these extracurricular activities and do sports and music and study and do well in that sense as well. And it was only after graduating, I graduated in 2019, and then a couple of years later, when I had sort of tried to settle into like full-time employment, that I was kind of forced to go on a period of sickness. And then I guess I kind of realized it's not going to be possible for me to keep doing what I was doing. I was just driving myself into the ground because I was, sort of determined to do what I saw everyone else doing. But yeah, as you say, it was an extremely, extremely difficult time. There was a lot of grieving what I wouldn't be able to do anymore, grieving the things that I wanted to do in my life that I felt would no longer be possible. I was feeling a lot of grief for my younger self, sort of my child self, being in pain and sort of being told that that was just, oh, everyone deals with aches and pains, that sort of thing. And kind of being told to just put up with it, all for it to come crashing down, and for me to realize, no, actually, this isn't quote unquote normal. Most people don't have to deal with these symptoms, and to sort of really have to face reshaping my life in a way that was going to be sustainable for me going forward.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. Would you say that you had experienced a period of burnout from trying to pursue your life as one would do if they were not disabled, when in fact you were dealing all these things that a disabled person would go through?
Yeah, definitely. I think my body was sort of taking control in that moment and being like, nope, that's enough. I'm going to force you to stop. If you're not going to stop, I'm going to force you to stop because I can't do it anymore. And yeah, in that way, my body very much sort of took control and was sort of telling me enough is enough.
Yeah, I get that. Thank you for sharing. I know that our listeners would like to hear about the arts education that you've received in the past. Could you talk about how you studied the arts and how you continue to learn today, even if it wasn't in a university atmosphere?
Yes, the formal arts education that I've received were piano lessons when I was younger. I pursued the grades, the piano grades. I think it's ABRSM in this country. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but they're sort of like formal grading for instruments. But in terms of singing, I've not had any formal education. I've not had singing lessons, or I've not pursued grades in that way. But I'd say that the years I spent studying the piano gave me a really good foundation in music theory, but also it sort of developed my ear. I think I was lucky to have been born with quite a good ear anyway, but it sort of helped me develop my ear to hear what a piece of music needs, how to sort of translate what's in my head into a body of work to some extent, and gave me sort of knowledge on harmonies and things like that as well. So the piano education that I received was really formative. But I'd say that's the only arts education I've received formally, yeah.
That's really cool. Has your arts education background impacted your experience in Mallavora?
I'd say it's given me basic understanding of theory, as I mentioned, which helps me to sort of help develop chord progressions, albeit I don't tend to write the instrumental side of Mallavora music. So that tends to come from our guitarist, Larry. He writes a lot of the instrumental, but it helps me to sort of support him in that and inform parts of our instrumental writing. But I'd say it has also helped my understanding of vocals as well, particularly vocal harmonies, understanding of key and pitch and things like that has all come from learning the piano, which sort of continues to help inform my vocals writing in Mallavora.
That's awesome. So since you're not involved instrumentally when it comes to songwriting and stuff, what kind of things are you involved with when it comes to band roles and dynamics?
So musically, how it usually works is our guitarist Larry will write a riff of some kind and will come up with the structure for a song. Me, Ellis and Jack, who are the bassist and drummer, then sort of provide our input, and the other two boys also sort of put their own spin on things from a bass and drum perspective. But usually the instrumentals are done first, and I take kind of an advisory role and sort of listening from slightly more outsider's perspective and kind of thinking, is this kind of conveying the mood that we want to portray? And then the song kind of gets handed to me to do the vocals, and that includes lyrics, melody, and harmonies and backing vocals as well. And I also do the scream vocals on our tracks. So I'm doing all the vocals from our most current EP. And in terms of, the workings of the band, I do a lot outside of the musical element. I think everyone who's in a band kind of knows that you have to be much more than just a musician.
Yeah,
you have
definitely.
to be a content creator, you've got to be an events planner, you've got to be all of these sorts of things. So I usually run our social media accounts. I sort of do a lot of like strategy work and kind of thinking big picture on the sorts of things we want to achieve. I sort a lot of our bookings as well and do a lot of liaison with industry and sort of various people within the industry. And there's so much more I could go into. I could probably talk to you for hours about all the little intricacies of being in a band. But yeah, musically, the vocals is kind of my thing. But going forward, I think we want to potentially incorporate synthy elements, or we're thinking potentially there might be space for me to play keys on stage potentially going forward. So that's something that I might look to work into our music as well. You heard it here first.
Thanks for sharing. That all sounds so cool with your guys' sound. So you guys are very active as musicians. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're currently working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So in May, we released an EP, which is a body of work that we're really, really proud of. And since May, a lot of work has gone into the sort of release campaign and giving the songs the sort of attention they deserve. And that also involves a lot of gigging. We played our first sort of major festival in the UK, which was 2000 Trees Festival, which was headlined by Bullet for My Valentine. We played that festival just last week, which was really amazing. So that was a huge achievement for us. But yeah, currently a lot of work is going into the EP strategy, and that also involves a live studio session that we recorded at the end of last month, which we're going to be releasing later this summer. So we went into a studio and sort of sat in a room, had a videographer, and recorded us playing through the EP live. So we're going to be releasing that, as I say, this summer, and hopefully that's going to be some great content, both short form and also we'll put the whole thing on YouTube as well. So it should be quite a nice opportunity for people to be able to watch and hear the whole EP being played through, because we weren't going to do music videos for all 4 of the songs on the EP. We did a music video for Disorder and Imposter as well, but not for the other 2. And that's kind of what we're up to right now. So it's quite busy. But then come autumn, we are going to be releasing another single, which we've been sat on for a couple of months, which is we're really excited about. And we hope to be playing a lot of shows to sort of support the release of that.
That's so cool. I'm excited to see your guys' live performance when that comes out. And I did hear about that festival in the UK. I didn't know you guys played that, but that's super cool. I've been seeing a lot of stuff from that on my my feed on Instagram of like mutuals playing there or going there. So that's cool.
Yeah, it was like a dream come true for us, honestly. It's the most people that we've ever played in front of. And it was just the best time. It was just the best time. I miss it.
Yeah, I can imagine. That seemed like a really good show. So we are going to listen to a clip of one of Jess's tracks in her band Mallavora. And Jess, can you please tell us a little bit about the track that's about to be played?
Yeah, so the track you're about to hear is Disorder by Mallavora. It's an angry, heavy single full of disabled rage. I hope you enjoy it.
This searing pain that's in my jaw, I wanna just rip it out and hurl my blood at the wall. So disempowered, I've no control, vulnerable, don't even pretend like you would ever understand. Sometimes my head goes up in flames, it burns me, looks at my teeth, I get so sick, don't touch me, think I'm weak, you wanna swap happily. Can you see me now? You've not been looking hard enough, I won't be silent anymore. Sometimes I hate this body. When you look at me, things aren't what they seem. Pain is all I see. Death on it's taking over.
Could you please tell us a little bit about your track Disorder and kind of what inspired the track?
Yeah, absolutely. Disorder was written about the difficult aspects of my disabled experience. I wrote it at a time when I was really, really struggling with feeling pretty angry at my disabled body for not being able to do the things that I wanted it to do. And I think a lot of disabled and chronically ill people will kind of relate to that feeling of frustration towards their bodies sometimes, which can be tough because at the same time, you know, you're grateful for your body for doing its best, but there can be points where you feel really let down by your body, and that can be really difficult to navigate. So I was dealing with a lot of those feelings, but I was also feeling really, really angry about societal attitudes towards disability. I was feeling angry about the lack of access that I feel like I see in society, and sort of the expectation. I feel like there is an implicit expectation of disabled people to just sort of mold into what's expected of non-disabled people, and just sort of try and push through and do what everyone else is doing, rather than there being adjustments made so that disabled people can thrive exactly as they are. You're sort of, you know, there's this expectation for you to just do what non-disabled people do, but with a disability, which is really unfair. And so, yeah, there were loads of really, really raw, angry feelings that I was dealing with. And Larry, our guitarist, wrote this really fast-paced, aggressive instrumental, and we decided that we wanted like a really, really hard-hitting, sharp, like aggressive 2.5 minute single. Basically, we were like, we want something that hits you in the face so hard, and then by the time you finish listening to it, you're like, what was that? I need to go back and listen to it again. we wanted that kind of single. And so he'd written an instrumental, and I'd sort of guided a little bit on how we could make it even more punchy, even more aggressive. And then, as I say, like with most of our songs, the song was kind of given to me to sort of, you know, put vocals to it. And almost immediately after I heard it, I sort of knew that I wanted it to be about disability. It just felt like it really matched how I was feeling about being disabled at that time. And the vocals and lyrics just came so easily, remarkably quickly, actually. I think I listened to the song a couple of times, maybe a handful of times, and then I just started to put down vocals, and it all came out probably in the space of about half an hour, and it didn't really require a great deal of editing. As I say, it was really raw. And I just kind of allowed myself with that song to just like unleash all of the disabled rage I was feeling. And I definitely was worried that people wouldn't get it. I think I was worried that it was going to be a bit too outrageous, a bit too angry. There's some lines in there that are particularly vulnerable, and I thought maybe people wouldn't understand. I was really quite worried about that. But I think at that time, I was just thinking, you know, I need to be authentic. I need to make art based on what I'm genuinely feeling, not what I think people want to hear. So that's what I did. And the impact has just been beyond my wildest expectations.
Yeah, that's great that you really just focused on what you wanted to say authentically. And I do want to talk about that a bit more in a moment. But additionally, the track really does do a great job at just coming in, hitting you in the face, and leaving. Like, it's really raw and heavy, and it gets the point across quickly and effectively. And I think it's an awesome track.
Thank you so much.
Of course. On the topic of what you had discussed in a little bit ago in your answer, it's definitely difficult to see society and to see all the patterns that are in place, and just the overarching energy towards disabled people. Basically, like, the expectation is for you to act non-disabled while you're disabled, and kind of there's an expectation for you to perform and be just like everyone else, despite the fact that you have a disability. And there's so many difficulties just in your day-to-day life that most of the time are not accommodated. So at that point, you're on your own to figure it out and to take care of yourself and keep your head above water. And if you fail to do so, then that's your fault. And it's difficult. But on the topic of like audience reactions to your track Disabled and this whole path that you're moving with Mallavora, throughout your journey as a disabled musician and bringing disabled advocacy into your music, what kind of reactions have you seen from audiences, both online and offline?
Good question. The reaction has been overwhelmingly positive. And it is overwhelming. It was quite overwhelming. I didn't expect it to reach so many people. I just sort of started making TikToks. I was really just figuring TikTok out at that point. I really didn't know what I was doing. And I was just sort of throwing things at the wall and just sort of seeing what was going to stick, And it just so happened that a video that I posted on TikTok of me sort of mouthing along to the song, and I was sat with my walking stick. It just sort of went viral, and it seemed to reach thousands and thousands of disabled people on TikTok who said they'd never heard the disabled experience put like that. They'd never heard, disability talked about in metal or in heavy music. They'd never people saying that, these were the feelings that they'd had about their own lives that they'd not seen articulated before, and that this felt like it was their feelings actually being articulated, which was just amazing. As I say, it was really overwhelming to get those sorts of amazing reactions. The countless messages, people saying they're crying when they're listening to the song, people saying it's like, everything they needed and didn't know they needed, and all of this stuff. It's just, I was so moved. I was so blown away. I also got very emotional reading a lot of the responses online. It was really special. And I think it kind of reaffirmed the importance of being authentic in your art and not making art based on what you think people want to hear. If you actually just, double down and make art based on your authentic experience, I think people can tell. I think people can tell when it's really raw and authentic. And as much as you may feel like you're alone in what you're dealing with, because I certainly did, I felt really alone at that point when I was writing the song. The response I've had shows that I'm so far from alone. There are so many thousands of people who feel the same way, and that it's that song that's connected us is really special. So as I said, 99% of the reaction has been really positive and amazing. And also just a lot of praise for the song musically, aside from the content. People saying that they absolutely love the riff, that it scratches an itch in their brain, that they love the scream vocals, which I was really proud of because I've not been doing scream vocals for that long. And yeah, like sort of people saying what you were kind of saying about how the song is like a really punchy track and it's just a great single. So yeah, and we had sort of the best industry reaction that we've ever had from our music based on that song. So that was amazing. There were a very small percentage of negative responses, super small, and I don't want to dwell too much on it because it was really, really tiny, but there was some defensiveness from, I think, people within the metal community, almost sort of saying, oh, you're not the first disabled artist that I've seen, or, we support disabled people in this scene, you're not doing anything different, kind of thing. And it was almost like they were kind of quite defensive of the fact that like I was proud of being disabled and within the heavy music kind of genre and within the heavy music scene, and they felt like they had to sort of defend their intentions or their attitudes towards marginalized people in the scene, which was a little bit disappointing to see, because I wasn't, at no point have I claimed that I'm the first disabled artist to do any of this. But I think it was interesting for sure to sort of note some of the defensiveness and figure out where that was coming from, because, even if there are multiple disabled artists within metal, it doesn't mean that there isn't still a problem with access. It doesn't mean that it's a visible issue. I still very much think that it's not a visible issue. I don't think disability is talked about much within the music industry as a whole, let alone within heavy music. And I do think there are real barriers to access for both disabled artists and disabled fans. So I think the sort of defensiveness was almost to like deny that there was a problem in the scene, which is a bit, it's like, oh, come on, let's be real. But yeah, that was literally probably like less than 1% of the response that I was getting. And that was only online. In person, the response was really, really, really positive and amazing. People coming up to me after shows, just saying really lovely things about the fact that I'm on stage as a disabled person and what I'm doing is important and all of that, which is really like life affirming to hear. It's really good. And in our more recent shows, I've started to get a little bit more confident with talking a little bit about accessibility and sort of attitudes towards disability in music and stuff. And every time I've spoken about it, I've received like an applause, and people have been really, really receptive and supportive. So that's been really, really good to see. So
yeah, definitely. Like, first of all, there's nothing off the table when it comes to music and what you choose to write and sing about. That's the whole thing with music, that you write about what resonates with you and what impacts you, and that's what impacts other people. And additionally, like, you never hear people commenting on a musician's track if, let's say, it's like a breakup song. You don't hear people saying, oh, everyone's been broken up with. You're not special. Why are you writing about that? So why do people do that for disabled musicians or people talking about nuanced topics? Because there is a stigma around that. So it's so important that you and other like-minded disabled musicians are taking that opportunity to really talk about that and bring that to light in musical spaces, because that's just something that needs to be talked about more, because there's a lot of things that people kind of avoid talking about or kind of like shy away from, but in musical spaces that does not need to be done. Like, more people need to talk about their authentic experiences, and I think it's awesome that you guys are doing that as a band, and it's great to hear that you've received so much positive feedback online with that kind of stuff, because I can imagine how much of an impact your music has made on like disabled communities online at the moment, because your music is really impactful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I do think I think actually that you're right about, music being a space to talk about uncomfortable things and difficult things, and there are going to be people that feel some pushback against that because maybe it's forcing them to confront biases or, internalized issues that they didn't realize they had, or, internalized attitudes that they've not faced up to. And so I think to a certain extent, if it's making people uncomfortable, then maybe it's really worth doing, because it's in that way it can be forcing a change.
Yes, the best art makes someone uncomfortable, in my opinion. Brings up something for someone to think about and address. But yeah, in context to you being a disabled musician, are there any routines or rituals that you do or have prior to shows that help ensure that you can be your best while performing?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's nice to be able to talk about it, because I think, people see you on stage for half an hour and they speak to you maybe after the show. People see the photos from the show or little clips, and they assume that you've just, woken up and just gone and done that, and they can only see that amazing moment. They don't see the hours and days of preparation that goes into being able to perform. And maybe that's something that non-disabled artists don't really have to think about. But as a disabled artist, so much preparation goes into being able to perform just for 30 minutes on stage. It's usually like cancelling all plans in like a 48-hour window, at least either side of the performance. Usually we're talking probably like a week, where I'll need significant rest both before and after the show, just to be able to get up and perform and give it everything I've got for 30 minutes. But there's also, my mobility aids come in really handy. So sometimes I will use a wheelchair off stage, which sort of minimises the amount that I'm having to walk about in and out of the venue. I mean, most of the time that's not possible because the venues aren't accessible. But when it is possible, being in my wheelchair before the performance sort of helps me to rest prior to getting up on stage. And there are various other things that I do to prepare, which includes the use of heat packs, various medication, eating and drinking well in a way that's sort of going to give me the energy that I need. And yeah, there's so much more preparation that I sort of do for shows, but it would take a while to get into, I think. But the most important thing is rest.
Yeah, definitely. Like, when it comes to playing shows back to back or touring, if you guys have toured yet, how does the fatigue kind of impact your ability to play shows one after the other?
Yeah, the fatigue is a huge problem. We've not done a proper tour yet. We have done 3 dates in a row, and that's the most dates we've played in a row. And that was difficult. But thankfully at the time I was doing quite well physically. I wasn't sort of in a flare-up or anything, and sort of using various techniques to manage it. Obviously not being the one driving, spending a lot of time with my feet up, basically resting as much as physically possible before and after each show, and trying to sort of pace myself through each performance as well. If I knew I had to do 3 performances on the first one, I wasn't sort of running about like a maniac on stage, because I knew that I would have to do the same thing the next night, kind of thing. So yeah, just sort of really trying to learn to pace myself. But the fatigue, particularly recently, has been really difficult to manage. And it's something I'm still sort of trying to learn to do, really, in a way that hopefully won't stop me from doing the thing I love.
Yeah, that's really good that you try to prioritize managing that so it doesn't get in the way of you being able to perform and kind of like be your best self out there. So as we kind of wrap this interview up, first of all, thank you so much for everything that you've shared. I've had a great time talking to you and just discussing all of this. So thank you for your time. And to conclude, what kind of advice would you give a young artist who is disabled?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. But Secondly, I absolutely love this question. To a certain extent, I'm still figuring it out myself, so I really don't feel like an expert on this. I have still so much that I want to achieve, and I feel like I'm almost like forging a path that it just doesn't feel very well trodden. It feels like uncharted territory in a lot of ways. So it is really difficult for me as I'm navigating this myself. But for artists that are younger than me, in their teens or even kids as well, I would just say, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. I've had so many people tell me I can't do it, and just being able to get up and be on a stage is proving all of them wrong. So I would just say you absolutely can do it. It's really important that you do make art and that you are present, and that if you can, that you're visible. Try not to put too much pressure on yourself to sort of be like an advocate or a spokesperson. I feel a lot of pressure myself now that I have a bit of a platform, as though I'm sort of speaking for the disabled community when I don't feel qualified to do that. But I think, just being there, just existing as a disabled artist is like enough of a kind of protest, and it's enough of a statement in and of itself. So yeah, I would just say, don't let anyone tell you no, don't let anyone stop you. You can do it.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jess, so much for your time and for this interview. I had a great time talking, and I had a great time guest hosting. I'm going to be guest hosting for the next couple of episodes, and I'm really looking forward to that. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Case. Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and all the best.
Able Voices is a production of the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education, led by me, Dr. Rhoda Bernard, the founding managing director. It is produced by Daniel Martinez del Campo. The intro music is by Kai Levin, and our closing song is by Sebastian Batista. Kai and Sebastian are students in the arts education programs at the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education. If you would like to learn more about our work, find us online at berklee.edu/BIAAE or email us at BIAAE@berklee, that's LEE.edu.